We're back with another episode of Boots, Balls and Bras with myself, Fara Williams, and the amazing Anita Asante. Neats, been a busy week for yourself?
I was covering the Man United Aston Villa game, so I'm reeling over that, to be honest. I'm really disappointed with Villa's performance, which we will get into.
We definitely will. I think I was at the Chelsea-Manchester City game, so I think there's no other place to start this weekend's chat other than talking about that. In my opinion, game of two halves. I thought Manchester City completely dominated that first half and Chelsea dominated the second, and Erin Cuthbert got the late winner. But we'll talk about the late winner a little bit into this, but we have to talk about Manchester City were 1-0 up in the first half, and then there was a bit of controversy right before the half. Caroline got fouled on the edge of the box by Millie Bright. The referee blew her whistle straight away, didn't allow for any advantage. Jess Park hits the ball, top bins, and the goal is disallowed and brought back for the free kick. I mean, what was your take on that? I know, watching the sidelines and the Manchester City, head coach Nick Cushins and the staff, they were absolutely fuming with the decision.
Yeah, a highly controversial moment. I think especially the state of the game, like you say, right before half time, Man City had the momentum. They were pushing for a goal and Caroline, gets the foul. I think the referee anticipates that the foul is going to be committed and then goes to blow the whistle really early. She probably should have allowed advantage to be played on and roll it back. But it is difficult for referees in those moments because I think in the football context, she's probably not recognised the next kind of sequence of play that could unfold and doesn't anticipate that. And when I watched it back, the Chelsea players are still trying to defend that situation.
Yeah.
So, for me, it should have been a goal if play had been allowed to continue. But as it wasn't, these things happen in football and players just have to get on with it. That's just the harsh reality. Happens all the time in football. Decision doesn't go your way, but you can't live in the past. You've just got to try and find another way to unlock that team and try and score again.
Yeah, no, I mean, as I say, in my opinion, definitely a harsh one. I think, as you said there, I think Caroline was having such an impact in that opening 45 and she did take a few fouls and maybe the referee on this occasion, as you mentioned, anticipated it because the whistle went straight away. There wasn't even a second delay in terms of any advantage, and she actually had a clear view of the tackle and the players around it. So I was a little bit surprised because there was a couple of City players, Jess Park in particular, that was able to come onto the rolling ball or the loose ball that were there. So yeah, I think City were very disappointed, and I think it actually maybe, in my opinion, changed the game a little bit because obviously if Chelsea go down 2-0 at half or go in at the half 2-0 down, I think that second half is completely different. But they went in 1-0 down and came out a completely different team. But we have to talk about it because I was saying before the game, Chelsea made 6 changes from the midweek Champions League defeat to Manchester City. They changed their whole midfield. So they had 3 new players in midfield. They moved Lucy from right back to centre half. They had 2 new fullbacks in. And then they started Aggie Beaver-Jones from the start. How disruptive is it for a team? I mean, you've played in an Emma Hayes team at Chelsea where they've got lots of players and constantly rotating. I felt, in terms of the connections, they weren't there with that many changes. I don't know what you thought of that opening half for Chelsea.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Man City dominated the first half in terms of their ball possession and just the kind of fluidity they displayed. And like you say, I've played in a Chelsea team where lots of rotation would happen throughout the season. And I always found it quite challenging, actually, especially when you make, 5-6 changes to a side where players haven't had regular minutes and match play to get that feeling, in their bodies as well, and those connections and kind of maintain or build that chemistry.
Yeah.
And I think it was really evident in that first half against Man City that Chelsea just didn't have that flow. They didn't have that connection. We talked about the fact that Caroline was having a field day. I think she was enjoying the game. She was really dynamic and tricky, and Niamh Charles just couldn't get to grips with how tight to get to her and was getting exploited a lot with that space, in beyond her. So really hard. And as a back line as well, speaking from a defender's experience, it's hard when you've not been playing and you're stepping into certain positions and having to build and that relationship with your centre-back pairing and your full-backs or wing-backs that haven't played in a long time together, as well as dealing with what is top quality forwards. Like, you know, it's one thing to try and figure out your own teammates and what their tendencies are. Do they like to be front-footed and step, or are they dropping off players? But then to have to deal with someone like Caroline or whoever it is on the pitch, I think is really challenging mentally as well.
Yeah, and it looked that way in that opening 45. I feel like from watching, we were sat right behind the Chelsea bench, and you could see right from the off what their intentions were. I mean, Sonia Bampastor, her interview before the game, she mentioned they need to play with better intensity. They need to have a better press, and they need to have better ball speed in terms of their possession. You could see that's what she wanted. But as you mentioned, with the personnel changes, I think the connections in terms of that press, they wanted to stop Hasegawa. She's an important player for Manchester City. We all know that in terms of setting up attacks. They didn't get anywhere near her. She was able to get on the ball quite often and set attacks up from that deeper area. And then I think in terms of their in possession, they wanted to draw City on to play in behind. But again, they couldn't, in terms of their ball possession. It was very sloppy in that opening 45. Again, that could be because of the changes. But we have to talk about half-time and the second half, because the difference, I believe, between the two teams was the fact that Chelsea could make 5 substitutions. And let me just name these subs. Kira Walsh, Erin Cuthbert, Macario, Fischl, and Ramirez. They made 5 changes in the second half and end up bringing the game back and winning with a late winner. It was Erin Cuthbert that got that late winner and win the game 2-1. I think City, in terms of being able to change the game and impact it, they only had defenders that they could bring on into the game. Do you think that was a difference in the two teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we know about the squad depth that Chelsea have, but they also have the quality of those players and the leadership as well, and experience that you're talking about. You know, the likes of Erin Cuthbert, Macario, you know, those players, they're really experienced players, and they know how to win football matches and what it takes. And also they're attacking players, and you could feel that momentum shift. And suddenly they were getting forward into high areas, creating more opportunities. And it just gives the whole team a lift, I think, and of energy and sort of belief, that they could go on and win it. But we always say, we're big, we really enjoy watching Erin Cuthbert play. But it's because she just does both sides of the game so well. Like she came in, she's breaking up play, she's getting forward, and you could see how much it meant to her and her teammates to score. But you need those players that can just 100%. Turn the game and feel it out and figure out how to exploit the opposition. And I do worry for City in that perspective, is that they've been really unfortunate with injuries. Yeah. We can't negate the fact that they've missed Alex Greenwood, they've missed Hemp. Now Firmino's picked up an injury, Shaw's out. Like, those are big players to lose in a team like Manchester City. So for me, that is the difference.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree. You just mentioned 4 of the players there that are currently out injured, and the goalkeeper. And then from the game, the weekend, there's a potential injury to Hasegawa and Alexandri. I mean, fingers crossed there's not, because they have a huge Champions League second leg coming up this Thursday at Stamford Bridge. So for Manchester City, they want to make sure that those players are fit and available. But that's been 3 games in 8 days between the two sides. Chelsea won the League Cup, a 2-0 down currently in the first leg of the Champions League, and obviously got that 3 points, which moves them 8 points clear of Arsenal, who are in second place. But we're going to talk a little bit about Arsenal, because they've been on an unbelievable run under Renee Slagers. They've only lost 1 in 11 games with Renee Slagers, and I think it's their last 6 games. They're the only team in the WSL to score 4 or more goals in a game, in a home fixture. So what do you make of Arsenal at the minute? I'm sure there would have been Arsenal players watching that game yesterday absolutely fuming with the decision of the goal to be disallowed, because obviously if City would have won, obviously it keeps that gap at only 5 points between Arsenal and Chelsea, and they still would have believed that they had a chance of WSL. But what do you make of Arsenal at the minute?
Yeah, I think Arsenal have been really impressive. They're having a really good moment, and feeling in the team. There's that togetherness, but there's also that enjoyment when I watch them play. Like, there's a nice rhythm to the way they play. They're enjoyable to watch. Renee Slagers has definitely turned the tide at Arsenal, and it's kind of unfortunate that they haven't had this momentum sooner in the season to really put that additional pressure on Chelsea. But I think if you're talking about someone that stepped into a role and been the difference and turned around this Arsenal team, then you have to give massive credit to Renee Slagers and how she's utilising the squad. But the biggest problem for Arsenal all season has been consistency. So, I think if they can get a kind of the momentum they have now, if they can start that way next season in particular, and continue that and get that consistency, then I think there'll be a real force actually to reckon with.
They'll be absolutely kicking themselves. They obviously beat Liverpool at the weekend 4-0 and lost 2 weeks ago in the FA Cup quarter-final to Liverpool 2-1. So, I mean, the contrast in terms of games and how they absolutely wiped the floor with Liverpool at the weekend, they'll be kicking themselves that they didn't do that in the FA Cup, I'm sure.
And in this game, you said it was 4-0, obviously, but they could have scored more.
Yeah.
Like, they hit the post several times. Like, they're a team that just feel like they're on, you know, they're having fire at the moment. They're creating so much that, you know, like I say, it's a shame that it just didn't happen a bit earlier in the season.
No, it's true. But that obviously they would have been looking at that Manchester City game and not so happy given the fact that they got such a good result the day before on a Saturday. But the other team was Man United, is the chasing pack as well. They went on to beat Aston Villa. You said you was at the game. Was it 4-0 in the end? 4-0 they beat Villa.
Yeah.
I mean, great result for Man United, obviously keeping the pressure on and obviously keep remaining in that Champions League spot. But rather than talk about Man United, we have to talk about Aston Villa and kind of those relegation teams at the bottom. We spoke a few weeks ago about what's going wrong at Aston Villa, but what is going wrong at Villa? I mean, they're 1 point off the bottom, Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
And they just don't seem to be able to pick up any points and get any sort of rhythm. They haven't scored, I don't think, under the new manager in the league. So it's looking... doomed for them at the minute.
Yeah, it's looking really desperate. I think, obviously, when Robert DePaul departed his role in December, they were around, I think, 9th. That has, you know, they significantly dropped off. Sean Gota kind of turned them around a little bit. They had a spell of, you know, where they won 3 games and you felt like, okay, they started to get momentum back and a good feeling back. But since then, you know, Arroyo's come in and they haven't won a game in 4. They've only scored 1 goal.
Oh, did they score?
Yeah, just 1 goal.
Okay, there you go.
You know, but they lost.
That was against Palace. Sorry, they did.
And, you know, they scored that 1 goal, but they lost. The game.
Yeah.
So I just think when I look at Villa, I look at a team, and I've been there, that didn't expect to be in a relegation battle. That's what I think's happened. Yeah. You know, there's been a late realization that actually this is the state of affairs. This is where we're at, and we're struggling, and we need to find results. And there's a number of those players in this current squad that have never experienced, I don't think, what it's like to be in a relegation battle. So I'm not sure they quite recognize how they can dig themselves out of this situation, and who the leaders are that step up and go bring the team together and fight, you know, and do the stuff that you don't always enjoy in football, which is you don't always get to play the way you want. You don't always get to enjoy the ball, but you've got to do all the other bits that are really important to secure results. And there's a little bit of, and I'll tell you this from my perspective, when I went from Chelsea, a top club, to Villa, a newly promoted club, from one end to the other, complete different spectrum. Yeah. And I had to kind of leave my ego at the door. Because it's that, you know. You
don't have a big ego.
No, but, you know, you think of yourself, you know, I'm a ball-playing centre-back. This is the way I enjoy football. This is the football I like to watch. But I couldn't necessarily do that at Villa. Yeah. The objective was completely different. So there is a part of, you've just got to leave your ego at the door and recognise what you're in and adapt to the moment that you're in, you know. And that for me was, I've got to clear balls. I've got to do the proper dirty defending work, and I've got to graft. And I could look my teammate in the eye, and I looked at players like Remy Allen, and I trusted that they were going to fight and work hard and do all the bits you need to do to stay in a game. To, you know, because they might not win a football match, but you've got to try and stay in it, get a point. You know, that's when I look at Villa. I'm just like, I can't see where that's coming from.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think they've got enough of those players that are prepared, as you say, to get that dirty, to be a little bit gritty and try and grind results out? Because it hasn't looked as if they've made changes again at the weekend. We spoke, I think it was a week ago, wasn't it? When we spoke about Jordan Nobb being on the bench, Missy Bo Kearns. We obviously spoke about Daly being on the bench. They all played against Manchester United and they had no impact in the game in terms of rolling up their sleeves and trying to dig in and get a result for Villa. Yeah,
well, the ironic thing is, if you look at the metrics, actually, you know, under Arroyo, they're better at pressing high up the pitch. They're better at forcing turnovers. Both ends of both boxes, they're slightly worse in that area, but in the middle of the park, they're good. Yeah. But I think that ultimately, it's not clicking for them. Yeah. Because the quality of their chances they create aren't good enough. The execution of that is not good enough. But the defending in the box, like Fara, honestly, they played in a back five.
I know, I've seen.
And they conceded 2 goals from a cross with literally one player in the box at times that they had to defend. And we know how much of a threat Turland is, but there's no way she should be able to get 3 headers in the box and score those from those situations. So then I'm looking and I'm going, is it the mentality though of the players? Because you have to fight in those scenarios and make it as difficult as possible for players like that to get the advantage. Yeah. That's just a game, you know? And so that's my thing. Like, is the manager, all the leaders in a team really getting into each other and making each other accountable for these scenarios or demanding more from their teammates?
No, 100%. And I would suggest not. And I think we spoke about those leaders and how those leaders aren't leading, and they have to change that mentality in terms of being in these big teams. And now you're not in a team that you're used to playing. And as you said, in terms of the style of play, now you have to roll up your sleeves. Are these players prepared to kind of put their ego aside and fight through? Do you think that because there is a team that's worse than them in Palace, that they'll be able to survive this season and remain in the WSL? Or do you think the changes at Palace, because I mean Palace had an awful result of the weekend as well, do you think that the changes at Palace, Villa are in real trouble? Or do you think, as I mentioned, that Palace are worse off than they are?
I genuinely believe that either team could go down. That's how close it is. In real honesty, I think Aston Villa are going to play one of the top 4. Crystal Palace have to play, I think, 2 or 3 of the top 4 back to back as well. Yeah. So if they get bad results in those games, that could also negatively impact them going into the games where they have, I believe, Leicester and West Ham. But you know, you would hope that Villa have enough quality in their team on paper to just get a win somewhere from one of those fixtures. Obviously, I'm looking to the Spurs fixture. I'm looking to the Leicester fixture potentially for them. But it's difficult when you look at Leicester's result recently.
Touch on that, yeah.
You know, a positive result for them. They'll probably take encouragement from that. I'm looking at Spurs, who are on a bit of a downward trajectory, not playing very well, getting bad run of results. So that's the game I would be targeting. Obviously, they want to get something out of every game. But I would find it really hard to imagine Aston Villa not surviving and staying in the WSL. You know, like, and personally, it would be really disappointing.
And it'll be crazy, but also the investment they've had, because they've had investment.
Yeah,
they had a little bit of investment under Carla Ward, and then I mean the personnel they brought in. You don't bring that in without a budget. You know, a bigger budget than teams around them, because why would you choose Villa, for example, over other teams that are other top teams in and around them?
Yeah.
So they've got a budget that's good enough to pay these players and bring 100%. These players in, hence why they've attracted the players that they have. So, I mean, go on.
But I also think, I was just going to say that what I found with the Villa, especially the manager's post-game comments, is like a disconnect. Because she was saying about like... the players are low on confidence, they're this, they're that. And then Byings was saying the complete opposite. Like, I still feel confident, I still feel these things. And I'm like, you know, what is it? You're not connecting there? And then she was talking about new ideas and things like that. I'm like, what new ideas?
Yeah.
Now is not a time for new ideas. Now is a time of like you drilling in your non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Like what you expect to see on the pitch for me. And that for me is a concern. And then on the flip side, you look at Palace and you go, well, actually they brought a manager with this kind of kudos in terms of his psychology background and everything. That could be, who knows, that could be the difference.
Yeah.
So Palace is that 100%. He understands people and their mindsets and how to just, you know, get them out of these moments.
Yeah, as you said, there's 1 point in it between Aston Villa and Crystal Palace. But Leicester City see themselves pull away. I think they're 6 points now clear of the bottom. So a big result for them beating Brighton. I think that was an unexpected win for them, but a huge win. And as you said, they do have Crystal Palace and Villa within their remaining fixtures. And so I'm sure they're going to want to take or be eyeing up those games to take points from. I think 3 more points for Leicester. I would imagine they're safe in terms of WSL football for next season.
I would imagine so, yeah. I think 3 more points for them and they should be, you know, they should be safe. But you know, those are the games that I think we're all going to be excited to see, because that could be the difference for either Crystal Palace or Aston Villa.
Yeah, I was going to just talk about Villa because they finished 5th in season 2022-23 season. They finished 5th on 37 points. And in 23-24 season, they finished 7th on 24 points. And I think currently they're on 10 points with 5 games remaining. So they can get close to those points, but the likeliness of them getting close to that and surviving. So 24 points last season, seeing them finish on in 7th position.
it's a massive drop-off, isn't it? A massive drop-off. And I think at the start of this season, the fact that they didn't get a win in 7 games didn't help them either get any kind of momentum or maybe belief. But all during that time, they probably thought, we'll get a result somewhere.
Yeah.
We'll get a result somewhere. And, you know, in fairness to them, they've had a lot of transition. You know, new managers in, new managers.
3 managers in the season.
You know, 3 managers
and
in the
there's not
season.
that many games in the WSL to kind of have those amount of changes in terms of managers.
Yeah. And the only way I can relate to that scenario is when I played in America and we had 3 managerial changes in 6 months. So it was a similar thing.
Yeah.
But
where did you finish?
And we won the championship.
There you go. It works sometimes.
Yeah, it works sometimes in your favour. But the reason I think we won the championship is because, like I said, we all had to look at each other in the eye and go, like, how much do we want this? Are we going to fight for each other? And are we going to just do what we need to do to try and turn it around and not worry about all the off-pitch stuff and you know, whether or not you like the manager or you don't, or you like their ideas.
Yeah.
The basics never change in football.
Yeah.
Right? Your commitment to the game, your understanding of defending and attacking when you're on the ball or your teammate doesn't change really.
Yeah.
So it's often also about attitude and will and desire in those critical moments too.
No, 100%, you're right. And obviously West Ham have pulled themselves well away as well. So they're doing really well. But Tottenham, I mean, we have to talk about that because they lost again at the weekend. I mean, I'm trying to even think back off the top of my head. The last time they actually won a game was a long while ago. So they picked up points really early on in the season, which I think has, you know, put themselves in a good position in terms of survival for the WSL. But manager, players, do there have to be question marks around them?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
there's something not right, clearly, in the dynamics there. And you know, I think we all at the start were applauding Robert Villaham for wanting to give Tottenham an identity, wanting to improve the playing style, you know, trying to be more in possession, play through the thirds, build from the back, all of that stuff. All that stuff is great, but you've got to also be pragmatic about getting results and do you have the right personnel to necessarily implement your game plan and your style? Yeah. And as you say, I almost think they lost, you know, obviously a couple players, they lost Bize, you know, and I think when you start, and they brought, you know, Beth England in, period where she wasn't playing.
They brought in Rasso, didn't they?
And they brought in Rasso as well.
Bizzell, and she probably hasn't had the same impact that she'd had when she was at Everton, and City.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100% on that. And I think I feel like they felt that they would be able to rely on some of their bigger players.
I mean, Jess Naz gets an England call up. There's so much hype around her. I would also argue that she probably hasn't had the performances that Spurs need her to have, or the impact in games.
Absolutely, I think that's part of it too. That they're not clicking or on the pitch. And Grace Clinton, obviously, that's a big you know, is a big miss. I think she had a huge impact on the team and was kind of the sort of composer in the middle, making things happen. And they've lost that sort of creativity. And I wonder if they lack a bit of dynamism as well.
They've lost goals from midfield as well, in terms of that area.
So when all these things, it's like all these components are going wrong at the same time. I think it's obviously really has a negative impact on all the players and their confidence levels and all those things. But I you know, for me, I mean, you got to think Robert Villaham's in trouble.
I would say so. I mean, you look at the managers that have been sacked this season with the results that they've had. I mean, we just spoke before about the Villa manager getting sacked, Liverpool manager getting sacked, Arsenal manager getting sacked, Crystal Palace manager getting sacked. And I'd argue some of these teams have had better results than Tottenham and have gone on better run of games. So, yeah, whether that happens or not, but I certainly think that the club need to be looking at that and looking at what's gone so wrong at Tottenham this season. But Neat, just before we do our quick fire predictions for the weekend, I just wanted to say, obviously, it looks as if Chelsea is really pulling away. We thought that maybe, you know, teams could get back in it and there might be a real fight until the end of the season. The 8 points clear. But in terms of that Champions League spot, do we think it's Arsenal's and City's now, or Arsenal's and Man United's, or do we think City can break into that? Ooh. United and Arsenal, both they're 7 points clear of City at this moment in time. Yeah, and I think Arsenal's remaining fixtures, I don't see them. They've got Arsenal remaining fixtures. They've got Palace, they don't lose that game. Leicester, they don't lose that game. Villa, they don't lose that game. Brighton, they don't lose that game. And I'd argue they don't lose the United game. So I don't see Arsenal dropping points between now and the end of the season. Then if we look at United remaining fixtures, Everton, West Ham, Chelsea, City and Arsenal. Now, United have the top three, the teams around them within their remaining fixtures. So do you think if, for example, Chelsea are to beat United, Arsenal are to beat United, and then City have to play them, do you think it will be out of United and City to get that remaining third spot?
I think it would be out of United and City, but I actually think the top three will be the top three.
You think?
Yeah, I do. I think when you look at United...
So if you're saying that, then you're basically saying that you think that United will take points from either Arsenal, Chelsea or City.
Yeah.
You think they'll take points from them?
I think United have had one of the best defensive records this season.
Until they played Liverpool.
Until they played Liverpool, exactly. And that could have been their little blip.
Yeah.
But I think that, they're a team that are hard to break down. So you're not scoring many goals. You might score a goal, but you're not scoring many goals. And that's largely in part to Fallon Tullis-Joy, who's pulled off, unbelievable saves this season. She has the highest save ratio this season, like 82.7%. So... that Liverpool game was a massive blip for them. And it's not to say that Man United aren't impenetrable because they still give up shots and opportunities. But I just think that they're in a better points difference this season than they were last season at this point in the season. Yeah. And in all the reverse fixtures that they have coming up, they have done better than Man City in terms of their reverse fixtures. So if I'm basing it off that, then I think they have a very good chance of securing that third spot. But of course, I think City will push them. And, probably now I'm giving City the impetus to go, we're going to prove you wrong and put on that charge. But
I think City will be looking at those remaining fixtures of United. Those three games that United have, as I said, they've got Chelsea at home, City at home and Arsenal away. City will be eyeing them up and praying that they could take their own points off them, that City can beat them themselves, and hoping that Chelsea and Arsenal can also. I think that's absolutely. I think it's going to be closely run. Either way, I mean, it's really a case of any United only have to draw one of those games in order to keep themselves. So they have to obviously beat Everton and West Ham, which I think we're guaranteeing that they'll do that, and then they only need a draw from one of those remaining fixtures in order to keep themselves in.
But that's why I think they're in the pole position to retain that third spot. I think the top three will be the top three.
The charges on, and the remaining 5 games are looking interesting. So we'll keep an eye out for them. But here is our favourite part of the podcast, Neats, our betting, our little accumulator from all of our betting sponsors that we don't have. Quick fire predictions for the weekend. Our accumulator, I don't think we won one this year.
No, we're not doing very well.
This is the one we're going to win. Man United, Everton. United. Liverpool, Villa. I'm going Liverpool. Leicester, Spurs. I'm going Leicester.
I'm going Leicester.
Palace, Arsenal. Brighton, City. That's off the back of a tough game on Thursday. They better stay down in London, City. And then Chelsea, West Ham.
Chelsea.
So there's our accumulator, guys. For the weekend. Need to got a couple of fans' questions, do we? Yeah,
let's go for it. Caris.priv. What team that you played for felt the most like family? That's a good question.
Mine was Everton.
Yeah, yours was Everton.
Yeah, I mean,
why
the environment, the culture that they created. I think it goes back to that whole ego thing. There was no ego at Everton. You talk about giving everything, rolling your sleeves up in difficult situations, probably having nothing, trying to compete with an Arsenal team that we felt had everything. They always had the nice kits, they always had good travel. They could pay for Julie Fleeting to fly in every weekend to score goals. And I think that, Mo Marley certainly instilled that in all of us in terms of that work rate before everything else. But we were really together. I think that it took for something to crack that, and it did crack in the end. But, certainly the 9 years that I was there, I would say 8 of them were by far the best in terms of that togetherness. Yeah, no, I mean, for me, I was going to say Arsenal, so we had everything. Sorry, but for me, I felt like Arsenal was that family feeling environment because it was the club that I, started playing for at 14 and was there till 21. So going from a kid to my adult years there. And they were a family because we, it really was like you fighting
you could fight with each other, but then you could be equally laughing and having the best time as well. And it's the same way you are with like siblings or other family members. So for me, I felt like we had such a tight group, and we had different ages as well, you know, like really senior players to really young players, but everyone made you feel included and part of something bigger. So yeah, for me, it has to be my time at Arsenal.
I think that was a similar in terms of where you mentioned that kind of blend of age and stuff like that. That was similar at Everton when we were there. But like, you just triggered me in terms of some of the things needs. I mean, when we played in Europe with Everton, and like we'd go away and like we'd go to the supermarket as a team and get like, you know, snacks, and we'd like, one of the rooms would be a snack room. We'd make like, and it was just crazy, the small things that we kind of did. And it was like, oh, let's all go and have snacks together. Like even before like snacks were introduced as a team. So yeah, we were kind of doing all those, oh look, it's like tea, let's go and have a tea together. So all of those little things that kind of bring you together was happening years before. Now they have their coffee, whatever they have, and whatever else. So that's what I remember about Everton.
No, for sure. It happens in an organic way too.
Yeah.
You know, you
not
saying
forced,
that, it's not forced. You know, Mary Phillip in particular and Leanne Sanderson would go to the, you know, Jamaican jerk chicken shop, whatever, and bring like rice and peas and everything. And you've seen all the Irish players, Welsh players, Emma Byrne, all that.
You didn't bring no jollof.
We all wanted to tuck in, you know, like all of us. And I think that's the beauty of football as well. It's just like bringing cultures together as well. So definitely that team.
Arsenal lack that a little bit, I will add, this year in recent seasons, that culture. But anyway.
So next question, accent_sponge. If you could pull one player out of retirement for the Euros England squad, who are you picking?
Myself. I mean, do they not need midfielders?
Guys, get Fara Williams out of retirement. She's ready.
I would always say Kelly Smith.
Oh, 100%.
I would always say Kelly Smith. In terms, they don't have a 10. They don't have a 10. England don't have a 10. That's as good as Kelly Smith. So yeah.
I was going to say exactly the same thing.
You was going to say me, Nate. Come on.
Well, you first, followed by Kelly. But I think attacking players who can score goals,
that, don't we? Yeah.
who can commit and dribble at players. Obviously, Lauren James has that, but the consistency of which Kelly could do it at was another level. So
completely,
that has to be our player.
That's a good question.
Really great question. The last question is from Amelia_11. What team has surprised you the most or overachieved in the WSL this season?
I mean, my surprise team is United, just given the season they had last year, finishing in 5th. And then just going back to those basics, as you mentioned, being hard to beat. I think they missed that last season. The season before, they had that when they got the Champions League spot. So I think they've surprised me in terms of the reaction. They got rid of a few players in the summer. There was loads of question marks over it, you know, getting rid of the core group of the team. So I think the surprise of them in terms of how well they've done. But in terms of the overachieving, I think that's different because I don't think United are overachieving. I think that's where they should be. But I think they're a surprise given the season they had last year. Yeah. Overachieving,
it's a tough question, isn't it? You look at
Brighton probably. I think Brighton, I'm going to say Brighton, overachieving. I just think they've got some good results against some tough teams. I think their performance again against Chelsea, I think they've given top teams a hard one. I know they will be looking at this weekend fuming that they've lost to Leicester, given the performance they gave a week ago against Chelsea to get a draw. So, yeah, probably overachievers. Brighton.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think on both fronts, I think Man United have kind of flown under the radar for the most part this season, and sort of, you know, delivered a consistent, especially because of the players they've lost. You know, we were saying at the start of the year, Man United are going to struggle, you know, perhaps, and Mary Earps is out, Russo, Zellum, all these players are gone. How are they going to compete? And they've definitely done that, and they've definitely
well, Man United fans have been quiet, which is that they're doing something right.
Doing so right.
Last season, the amount of like questions that were fired at us from United fans.
That's true.
Suggests that this season they're doing better because we don't get as many. We don't get Skinner out anymore. They must be doing something right.
That is very true. So I agree. I think Man United have definitely surpassed expectations this season. Surprise team. No one's done kind of what Liverpool did, last season when they finished in the top 5 and, you know, pushed the top 4. But I think you would look at Brighton and say they are the team that have overachieved for kind of sort of being an unknown entity coming into this season. What would they produce? We knew they got some good signings in, obviously with Nikita Paris and Frank Kirby as the marquee signings, but I didn't expect them to be, doing as well as they have and sitting so high up the table. And I think it's a good foundation for which they can build upon going into next season. And I just feel that all the other teams have been largely inconsistent. So,
agree.
Liverpool haven't been able to replicate that kind of season they had when they were up the top. And 2 seasons ago when Aston Villa finished 5th, they haven't been able to replicate that since. Leicester and all those teams are kind of where you'd expect them to be. Spurs are nowhere near where they probably think they should be.
Yeah.
So those are realistically the 2 teams that you're looking at and saying, well, actually, they've done much better than we could have predicted.
For sure. Well, guys, thank you for your questions. Thanks for listening to Boots, Balls and Bras. Make sure you like, comment and subscribe. Also, send in your questions. We're here between now and next week. Any questions, any topics you want us to talk about, we're more than happy to. But thanks for listening and we will see you again next week.